report. This report is known as the annual SDG report card, and it shows the world is getting a failing grade. Only 17% of the SDG targets are on track. Progress on over 1/3 has stalled or even regressed. The takeaway is simple. Our failure to secure peace, to confront climate change, and to boost international finance is undermining development. We must accelerate action for the Sustainable Development Goals, and we don't have a moment to lose.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Ordinary Voices. My name is Valdivia Virginia. I'm your host for today. It is a pleasure to be with you. I kindly request for your pardon. We've been a bit late today starting our session, but nonetheless, it is a pleasure to be here and I look forward to engaging with you. So once again, before I begin, I'd like to say thank you to our guests for the day. And we are going to be discussing the role of young people towards climate action. And I hope to be able to engage the guests today in our topic. So before I begin officially, allow me just to request that our guests are able just to say hi. So we know that they're in the house, and then I can be able to officially begin the session. So to Jambi and Thomas, welcome so much to the session. Thank you for joining us. Are you able just to unmute? Say hi, your favorite SDG, what you're passionate about, and then we can be able to officially begin the session. So Jambi or Thomas, who wants to kick us off today?
I think I can start.
Yes.
Okay. A minute to turn on my video.
Yes, no problem.
I think I can start. I can join in later using the video. So my name is Jambi Gashambi Gadesha, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, a humanitarian lawyer, a certified professional mediator, and a digital marketer.
Yes.
My favorite SDG, but it's very hard to choose between all the SDGs because I believe they're very, very powerful sustainable development goals. But I'd go with peace, justice, and strong institutions. That is my favorite SDG of all time, simply because by virtue of being a lawyer, of course, when you talk about law, you're talking about justice. But that also being a favorite SDG, it's because of, for you to build a foundation of anything, there has to be access of justice in that particular case. If you want to talk about the rights of children, it goes back to access of justice. If you want to talk about environmental law, there has to be justice for people to understand the power or the impact of environmental law. So that is my one and favorite SDG. And the other one could be the SDG 8, decent work and growth.
Okay.
Simply because I believe it comes to a point where the foundation of the society is also employment. We're looking at when you're talking about the minimum wage of either a manual laborer or a white collar job or any particular job. So I believe that as a nation, especially here in Kenya, knowing that we're in a crisis right now, the foundation of people even going for that protest and their rights to picket is because the taxes are high, the youth are unemployed. So yeah, yes, that's it for now. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jambi. So maybe Thomas, you would also be able to share with us who you are, what you do, and what is your favorite SDG?
Sure. Well, very glad to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm Thomas. I've been a great admirer and follower of GIF for over the past couple of years, and thank you to my friend Peter Omani for making this happen. In terms of my favorite SDG, since we're in a climate panel, and since that is what I focus during my work, I guess I must choose SDG 13, which is climate action. And and looking forward to the discussion and talking more about how youth can be involved in the climate space.
Okay, and just for clarity, for both Jambi and Thomas, your favorite SDG goal? Is that what you're working on at the moment, or you're in different fields? Maybe I think even the better question would be, what change do you hope to see in the world? Despite maybe the backgrounds that you both have, what change, maybe in a sentence, do you see for the world in the next maybe 5-10 years?
I think I can go first.
Yes, okay.
So pertaining whether I'm working on within the same area of the SDGs that I've mentioned, I'd say it's a yes and no answer. So it's on a balance of probability. Because when you're looking at, as I had said, peace, justice, and strong institutions, that's basically the foundation of any legal career. You have to understand that there's need for peace, there's need for justice. And where do I want to see, what do I want to see in the world rather? Peace and harmony, let's begin with, because I believe that at some point here in Kenya or even in the world, talking about peace has become something that is so far-fetched. You're looking at so many countries that have internal wars or even external wars. How did you get here? How did you get to a point whereby peace is not the normality of anything? So that's one thing I'd love to see in a few years, or even from even now. I believe where we're headed, it's so sad to see that so many countries are in conflict. There's nothing, or whatever is being done is not as much as what we can do as individuals or even as nations. So peace and harmony for me is something that I'd love to see over the years to come. And another thing that I'd appreciate is equal opportunities, in terms of equal opportunities in healthcare, in the healthcare system, in terms of economic opportunities, despite your race, your age, or your tribe. So yeah, that's what I'd love to see in a few years to come. Hopefully we can achieve that and even more. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Jambi. And Thomas?
Yeah, and I'll try to turn my camera on and apologize. I'm on my
Yes,
phone.
kindly.
But
Yes.
yeah, in terms of what I'm working on and does it connect to the SDG that I mentioned earlier? Yes, currently I'm focusing on climate and environment. So that is SDG 13, right? Climate action that I mentioned a bit earlier. But in terms of the other SDGs involved and what I've worked in, so I worked in the international development industry. And so within that, I have, some a bit of small experience in different SDGs as well. Right? For example, in energy, which is SDG 7, Jambi also mentioned SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth, right? So that is also quite permanent, right, across the continent and elsewhere, honestly, across the globe. And others, right, also include SDG 17, which is partnership for the goals. A lot of what we are working on in my day-to-day is forming partnerships and forming cross-sectoral partnerships between the civil society, between the corporate world, between foundations, between donors, and cross-sectoral, partnerships, basically, right, to advance the different SDGs, right, climate action included, but also the other SDGs, right, whether it's SDG 8, S7, quality education, global health, et cetera. So yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Thomas and Jambi, for that. Apologies for our next guest, Mr. Ken. He sends apologies. He's finding a bit of challenges joining in, but hopefully he'll be able to join the program as we proceed. So before we join in the full discussion, just allow me to speak briefly about what GYF is and what GYF does, just to give a brief to our listeners today. So our vision as GYF is to be a leading young youth NGO in Africa, supporting young people in creating a better future for themselves. And the ways in which we do this is through 4 different programs. We have one, the Ordinary Voices, where we are able to provide a safe and inclusive platform for our listeners and everyday Kenyan, just to be able to discuss issues affecting their communities, come up with mitigation measures or solutions to be able to handle some of these problems, and of course, mobilize like-minded individuals to be able to be able to implement these solutions. And then we also have Sports for SDGs, which is an inclusive global sporting program, and we usually have we use the 17 sports to develop and advocate for a project to be able to address each of the sustainable goals of the UN. And so we also have a Football for Peace, which is a part of that, which is we are able to engage 17 teams of both genders to be able to advocate for peace, and of course to advocate for peace and inclusion using sports and particularly using football. So that's Football for Peace. And then we also have Molding for Work, which is a program whereby we engage students from younger learning institutions to be able to participate in a one-year program. And of course, in the program, we have different units, and the young people are able to learn different ways of being able to either create or secure employment for themselves through the various lessons that we give. So we have apprenticeship, we have internships, we have volunteering, attachments. So young people, especially those in the tertiary education, that is the campus and universities and colleges, can be able to take part in this program and be able to benefit the most from this. And of course, last but not least, we have Archery for the Goals. So we usually use archery as maybe as an individual act to be able to come up with sessions that provide practical goal-setting skills to the young people. So as GYF, we hope that we can be able to offer the necessary skills to young people to either secure or create jobs through the various coaching, mentorship, and sports programs that we have. So kicking into our session today, thank you so much for both Jambi and Thomas. And of course, as we discuss the role of young people in climate action, I'd just like to be able to pose a question to our guest today. What do you believe, especially for Jambi? I'd like to start the first question with you. How do you think young people can effectively use their voice and platforms to either demand climate action change from decision makers? So do you believe that there's a role that young people play, and what do you think as young people we can effectively use our voices to be able to advocate for some of the solutions or some of the mitigation measures we seek to have as young people in our country, especially in Kenya, seeing as your Kenyan resident? So would you like to kick us off with that? Maybe you can be able to respond to that.
Thank you for that question. I believe that's such a timely question, especially with the role of young people in changing or curbing whatever issue is that there is in Kenya, or even the young people setting the base for so many African countries. So how do I think that young people can effectively use their voices and demand action or a better playing field for them in the climatic environment or climatic sector? So first things first is through social media. And it's not the point whereby we are eating, we're breathing, we're living social media. So if any person can come outside there and raise the awareness on the climatic issues that are happening on any platform, I think you're one step forward towards curbing the whole issue. So if you can use your platform for the benefit of the whole climatic sector, then use it to the beneficial or raising awareness of the things that are happening in the climatic sector. So don't take social media for granted, because one tweet could actually change a whole thing. One post on Instagram, one post on LinkedIn, or even Facebook. See, another thing that we should opt to do is having direct conversations with the decision makers in the climatic sector. And when I'm talking about that on the Kenyan ground, it's about having a conversation with even the ministry itself, because you can get to question the ministry. What are you doing? What are you doing? Right now, we're seeing so many trees being cut all around. Why are the trees being cut? Is it for the beneficial of the environment? Is it to benefit the youth? Is it to benefit? You see, things like those, we need to hold accountable even the ministry itself. And another thing that we should do is having meetings and holding the leaders accountable, which is in relation to taking part in direct engagement with these particular leaders, you see. And lastly is make your voice be heard, you see, where you are, from where you're seated, from where you're listening from where you are. I think it's prudent to understand the role of climate in this particular time and age, you see. We're headed towards such a bad road whereby we won't even have the environment to talk about in a few years, because you can't even have dialogue, and you can't even talk about these things. So amplify your voice through any channel that you get. Have dialogue with these particular leaders, have dialogue within your communities, or even onboarding partners in your organization. So it starts from dialogue. It starts from dialogue. Let your voice be heard. That's what I can say for now.
And thank you, Jambi, for that. And I think from your feedback, you're able to speak to the fact that young people need to be directly involved in issues that affect climate change. And I'm hoping the next session you are able to join us, be able to see who we are talking to. But as we proceed, allow me to speak now to Thomas. in your experience, you see, you've obviously been involved in technology issues, and so I wanted to gain from you. Do you see technology driving any innovation in the climate change space? And if so, what can we learn from young people's use of technology to fight climate change?
Yeah, I must say before I start, right, what Njombi said really is what GYF is already doing, right? And I think that's why I admire the work that the team does so much, right? Creating such a platform, right, to have, you know, rich discussions, right, and to, you know, have a safe space, as you said earlier, right,
Yeah.
to have the voice being heard. But in terms of answering the question, when I was in Kenya, I was actually working in the climate technology space, and especially focusing on strengthening the innovation ecosystem and building, helping launch climate tech ventures. And you know, one thing I'll say about Kenya is the talent ecosystem, or the talent is so strong, and it's so amazing to meet folks, right, and to see what they're doing and what they're accomplishing. So in Kenya itself, there are so many examples of, you know, young entrepreneurs, right, launching ventures, right, some unsuccessful, right, but some successful examples, right, in terms of connecting technology and climate, right, and then making an impact. So I guess a few, right, one I know quite well, and I've been following also over the past couple of years, just like how I've been following GIF and trying to, you know, make my own small impact, is Kuza Freezers. So they based in Mombasa, in Kenya. And so actually they started in the blue economy space, working on helping small scale fishers by leveraging technology to reduce the spoiling of fisheries. But now actually they launched their second product line for the smoky vendors, right? So this is actually leveraging their core technology in the climate space, right? From the blue economy actually now to the streets, right? In Mombasa and Nairobi and across the country. So I think that is such an amazing example of how you know, young people are leveraging technology, right? It doesn't need to be crazy technology, right? It doesn't need to be AI, right? But solar, right, is a type of technology to, right, combine with their own you know, resiliency and their willingness to make things better, right, and make the world a better place. So that's just one example of so many, right, that are existing in Kenya already, and I only know a few, and there's so many more that I don't even know, right? So I think so many people are doing so many great things out there, and I think it's our role, right, to be in these spaces to highlight and to celebrate, right, what is already done, but also to think of solutions of how we can further advance and further support these ventures, right, and further support this innovation ecosystem for more technology and more people, especially the youth, to be involved in this space.
Okay, and I think you're actually giving a very well broken down experience with what you have also done and also worked with the third world country. Allow me to say that. And also, I'd just like to ask, in terms of experience, what advice would you give young entrepreneurs looking to build innovative solutions in the climate space? Do you believe that, especially in developing countries, that we do have certain climate impact and climate impact and economic challenges that we can be able to solve as young people that are going to be a bit different from the developed countries, for example? Do you have specific advice you can give to developing countries, especially the youth, on how they can best use innovative solutions to be able to tackle climate change?
I think we should, you know, think about this question a bit differently and almost challenge ourselves in terms of how the question was framed and reframe it a bit, right? I think people, you know, in places like Kenya, right, and other locations, right, other countries within the continent, because climate impact is so direct, right? I think there is even more opportunity for innovation and more opportunity for the participation of youth, right? And the ecosystem, the innovation ecosystem, is actually a lot more it's actually a lot more democratic, because in mature innovation ecosystems, let's take Silicon Valley, for example, right? The tech ecosystem in the United States is actually quite hard to break in, because the giants, right, are there, and they are, you know, they are dominating. So it's actually harder to break through. But in places like Kenya, right, as long as you have, like, I think, the will, right, and as long as you you have an idea, right, and you're actually out there, right, talking to individuals, trying to test your solution, build out your product, right, then I think anything is possible. So in thinking this question, right, the other way around, it is actually more beneficiary, right, to be in somewhere like in Kenya for youth to be able to drive such technology, drive such solutions forward.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think I see Justin. Justin, you're able to hear me? I see you joined in the discussion. I want to engage you in the very lively discussion about youth and climate change. Can you be able to hear me? If he's not, Jambi, I saw you mentioned that you're having some technical issues. I don't know if you've been able to join us, but if not, just to our listeners, you've been able to join us, Jambi?
I can be able to hear, but I'm having problems with my camera rather.
Okay.
I've been trying to fix it, but yeah, we can just proceed. I'm still here.
Okay. Thank you for that. I just wanted to notify to our online listeners, if you have any questions or you'd like to interact with the guest, feel free to reach out. You can be able to share your questions via Facebook. We are live on Facebook, so you can share your questions via that. Or if you're able to see this after the session, still feel free to engage us after the live, and we'll be able to answer some of your questions. So Jambi, this is your question. I'd like to know, especially with the background in law, what advice would you give to young activists in Kenya to ensure that they maintain their energy and momentum, especially in the face of climate crisis?
Okay. My advice could be, even from just an ordinary perspective, with the legal background being put behind a bit, is to ensure that you've stayed informed. Ensure that you've stayed informed. It's key for any individual, even in participating in the activism towards curbing the climatic sector or any problem that's coming up from the climatic sector, is to stay informed, because with information, then you'll know how to deal with particular problems. But you can't just be moving forward when you're not informed. You see, we can't say we are fighting for the environment or the climate. Yes, you know, you have no you have no agenda, you have no information of what the problem is. So the first thing is to stay informed. Always stay informed. You can use the internet to do your research. You can ask around your neighborhood, or even stay on the news. Use your social media platforms to stay informed and know if you're moving forward in the climatic sector, this is what we're meant to do. If it's a matter of activism, are we going outside there to march for the environment? If it's a matter of cleaning up a particular street in town, then this and this. Another thing is to also prioritize the actions pertaining the climatic sector. What does that mean? As much as you're saying you're fighting for this climate, you can look it up in form of advocacy. What can we do? What policies can we input? You see, which bill can we draft that is going to help the climate? You see, what can we do to reduce the emission of carbon credits and all that? So that's one thing. Those are the 2 points that I can rely on in terms of what we can do to ensure that the momentum of the crisis that's happening in the climate sector has been curbed. Yes.
Okay, thank you for that, Jambi. And then, of course, still getting into the discussion, I wanted to pose this question to Thomas. Do you advise that as young entrepreneurs, we can be able to come up with innovative solutions, especially in the climate space, that speak to strategies or ways in which we can be able to guarantee success that is a bit different from the first world countries? Would you suggest that there are different ways in which developing countries can be able to tackle climate change that is a bit different from already developed countries? Or do you think that it's okay for us to still be able to maintain the same strategies as developing countries and still get the same result?
Yeah, I must say this is actually a really, really interesting one, and I've been thinking about this a lot, also myself over the past couple of years that I've been involved in innovation ecosystems, and especially following and being, I guess, like a cheerleader of the climate space, right? Entrepreneurship space in Kenya, and I must say there's a theme throughout this conversation, which is I think the importance of kind of advocacy and youth efforts, right? This is definitely prevalent across the world, but in places, especially in Kenya, actually, a lot of people that I know that started in maybe trying to organize, right, and launch climate startups with a tech angle, right, actually have to turn their ideas and solution to a bit more, I guess, advocacy, grassroots training focus, because unfortunately, right, the system is set up in terms of the international development ecosystem. This sector is a lot grant based, right, and it is not easy, right, to raise capital in somewhere like Kenya without a proven solution, right, and without capital, you can't create your initial minimal viable product, et cetera, et cetera. So it is a very, unfortunate, I would say, right, once again, spiral, right? So people actually have to pivot to focus on advocacy work, local work, grassroots work, training work, because that is where, there are potential opportunities, right, to receive, small grants here and there. And I think once there is, right, this minimum capital, right, then you leverage what you have existing to then go back, right, and then work on some of your more kind of tech focused, right, or capital heavy focused ideas, right, whether it is tech, whether it is product, right, or whether it's machinery focused, right, because uh, unfortunately, right, if you're working in this space, especially kind of launching ventures, launching startups, right, capital is always such a challenge. But to be honest, this challenge is not just, for somewhere like Kenya or, elsewhere in Tanzania, Uganda. It's a challenge across the world, but in Kenya especially, right, in Africa, right, the system is just set up a bit differently. But I truly believe, right, folks, right, that are listening, especially folks in Kenya, the mindset is so special and so important, right? I think the hustler mindset that everyone has, right, is very, very powerful, right? And people don't give up and don't quit easily, right? So if this doesn't work, right, we can pivot and pivot and pivot, right? And then maybe something will work someday later on, right? And I think that's just such a special quality, such a special trait, right, that is so important for youth, right, that are working towards climate action, right. This might not work out today, but tomorrow or next year, right, 2 years later, your idea or your second or your third or maybe your 10th idea might finally blossom, right, but your first night don't, right. So I think it's just the perseverance, right, and then the hustler mindset, right, I think are very, very important traits, right, to think about and to continue to act upon.
Okay, thank you for that, Thomas. And I think also just from your discussion, I can be able to pick up on the part where you're actually suggesting that maybe, for example, as Kenya, we can just be able to scale up on some of the renewable energy that we do have in Africa, just to be able to meet some of the increasing demand for energy while still avoiding the negative impacts of traditional energy sources. I hope I'm able to get you on that. But if not, I hope we can clarify it. Because I think also, as you're saying, capital is an issue for all countries, like not just for the African continent. So I'm thinking on issues of climate change, we could be able to scale up on some of the renewable energy, just for us to be able to mitigate some of the issues or some of the consequences that come with traditional energy sources. Because again, money maybe may not be always available.
Yeah, no, I think Val, you bring up a very, very interesting point. Actually, Kenya is actually such an interesting test case and example. So in terms of energy in Kenya, right, this is not my specialty, but my few very rudimentary thoughts are I guess the following. One is Kenya is advertising itself, right? And organizations like IRENA, right, like which is like the International Energy Regulatory Agency, I believe that's what it's called, are saying that Kenya is actually 70% renewable energy or 70% above, right? And then the 70% constitutes of bioenergy. And I actually did some research, but I'm still unsure of how this calculation, right, is being done. And last year, for example, right, at ACS, right, at the African Climate Summit, the first one held in Nairobi, Kenya, which is, I believe, right, highly successful event. It was boosted, right, that Kenya is predominantly reliant on renewable energy, right, compared to a lot of other countries in the world. So that is how it is publicized, right, globally. But I understand, right, there definitely is demand and supply challenges, right, in Kenya, and renewable energy sector is actually quite also capital intensive, right. So I've been working on some renewable energy projects independent power producer projects, right, in Southern Africa. And it takes years, right, and sometimes maybe decades to set up a independent power producer, right, and to scale and set up and scale renewable energy sources, right. So it's a very, very tough one, but I think Kenya is leading in a couple of sectors, right. Maybe not completely, right, like let's say solar or wind or hydro, right, but two areas where I believe Kenya has or three actually has carved out a space for itself, right, are the following. One is the carbon market space, right, which Njambi mentioned. I think Kenya is definitely leading, right, a lot of thought leadership, a lot of actual practice, right, and a lot of money is flowing into Kenya to work on carbon markets, right, whether it's in the green economy, the blue economy, right. The blue economy in Kenya is where I'm a bit more familiar, right, especially mangroves, blue carbon, right, that is definitely somewhere that is attracting a lot of attention, right. And carbon markets in Kenya, I think, is decently developed, right, and it's actually quite developed compared to the rest of the continent, or if not across the world. So that's number one. Number two is e-mobility, right? I think that ties a lot with the theme of the Africa Climate Summit last year. So I think Kenya definitely is leading Africa in terms of e-mobility, right? Whether it is bodabodas, right? Whether it's bicycles, whether it's other modes of public transportation, right? I know this e-mobility sector is quite prominent recently and in the past 2 to 3 years, and there are so many new opportunities, startups that pop up every day. And I would say the last part is in addition to carbon credits and also in addition to e-mobility is the clean cooking sector, right? So the clean cooking sector is part of the renewable energy sector, right? Although some might disagree, right? But personally, I believe clean cooking is such an important plays such an important role in the entire renewable energy ecosystem, right? And in Kenya, along with countries like Tanzania, et cetera, are also leading, right, in clean cooking across the continent. So I would say these three examples, right, are where Kenya is actually doing quite well. And I think, the country, the nation as a whole should be quite proud of and continue to advance, right? Not only these three renewable energy sectors, but also, beyond to maybe let's start thinking about a bit more of the capital intensive sectors. So yeah, these are my brief thoughts.
Right, jumping in for Val, seems like electricity seems to be really bad where she is, but I'm chiming in to share. But Thomas, I like the idea of the cooking energy. There was a time I visited a number of schools, and the biggest source of energy they were using to cook their food or use their meals, or like cook their meals, was cutting down like the trees, like the wood as a source of energy. And as you speak and share a bit about that, it reminds me about that source of energy. So I'm just trying to look, Njambi, are you still with us? And Justin, double checking with you so I can dive right in as I'll join in. So Njambi, what is your reaction towards Thomas' thoughts in terms of the renewable energy and the use of that to conserve the environment? What are your thoughts?
Okay. First of all, I'd love to commend Thomas for his presentation. It's shed a lot of light on what we can do in order to curb this climatic issue. And he's spoken about the climate change mitigation in form of clean energy, in form of carbon credit. So for us to be able to head there, I believe there's need for a conversation, because even when you mentioned about carbon credit and all that, people don't know. People don't know the value of that tree they've planted in their compound, you see. And it's so easy for someone to be manipulated and taken advantage of if you don't know the value of something. You don't know the value of, if I plant this tree emits this particular carbon, this carbon credits could be used in this particular way. So it goes back to having a conversation about it, you see. Educate people, advocate for these things, tell people that where we are headed, knowing that we're going to face a major climatic issue, but with this tree, this is what you can do. And even if this is going to help the environment, it's also going to help you economically with the money gotten off the carbon credits, and you can be able to maybe pay for your children's school fees and all that. So it's nice to know that here in Kenya, there's already particular policies in place about the carbon credits, and it's such a forward-friendly initiative, but people need to know. You see, the same way that Thomas has said, the same thing that you've also said about clean energy when you're doing the touring in particular schools. So enhance the conversation about it in order for us to protect the environment in its entirety. Yes, that's what I can say.
Right, good insights there. I was reading a report. This report was launched yesterday. I think this might be outside the box, but it says that 2022 or 2023 was the hottest years in history. And if we are not very careful, we might go beyond 1.0 degrees centigrade. In your thoughts, do you think we can hit below this target by 2030? And if not, what can we do as young people, or young people out there now, call them Gen Zs, millennials, and Gen Alpha, and everybody? What actions can we actually take or inspire young people out there to take to ensure that we do not go beyond 1.5 degrees centigrade in terms of the global warming? Can we go with Thomas on this one? And then we chime on to the next one. Thomas.
Sure. I think, Peter Mondi, this is a very, very good question. I think this is the toughest question thus far, right? 1.5 degrees, right, is part of the Paris climate agreement. And unfortunately, right, we're not doing so well, just like the video you played from the Secretary General, right, Antonio Guterres, regarding to SDGs as a whole. Actually, a few years ago, I had the pleasure, right, to actually ask Secretary General Guterres this exact question: are we on track, right, to meet the 1.5 degree target, right? And unfortunately, the answer is we're quite off track. Mm-hmm. And the question you propose is, what can we do, right? And I think it goes back so much, right, to what Njambi is saying in terms of individual, right, advocacy, right, individual actions, right, because this is what we can able to control, right, to navigate and to be able to lead, right ourselves, right. Renewable energy, yes, sure, right, let's pursue as much as possible, right, but that is a whole of society, right, whole of government, multi country, multi-organization, multi-partnership effort. But I think at the end of the day, right, that is why what I was saying earlier is that actually, in addition, right, to kind of these climate tech, ventures, right, startups, right, equally important, right, partners, right, or sisters, right, leading the charge in climate action are the people that are doing the training, that are doing the advocacy, right, that are doing the community engagement, right. So I think that is where a lot of emphasis can be put on is actually individual action, right. So 1.5 degrees, right, unfortunately is quite a tough one. There's no silver bullets, right, as people say, but let's just hope for the best, right, and do whatever we can, right, as individuals, right, to influence ourselves, to influence people around us.
Okay, influencing ourselves and influencing people around us. Very insightful. Njambi, and then Justin, I come to you. What are your thoughts? What can we do? What actually ensure that we do not go past 1.5 degrees centigrade in terms of the global warming?
Yeah, so to echo whatever Thomas has said and to also shed light on a few pointers that we can add, I believe change starts from within. Change starts from you. You can't change the world if you can't change your own state, to be sure. So the first thing that we can do is really protect the environment. And what do I mean about protecting the environment? If it's a matter of having maybe cleanup policies, maybe during the weekend, advocate even for the leaders around you, call them and hold them accountable. Tell them, why is there a dump site where children are living? You see, why is there no proper garbage collection? Even in Nairobi CBD, you walk around CBD and there are no litter bins. You see, change starts from within. Call your leaders accountable. Hold these conversations with them. If it's a matter of cleaning up the environment, have a particular day whereby you clean up the environment. And also to make reference to one of the most powerful ladies that we've experienced, Wangari Maathai, if she didn't fight for that particular place where we now call it Uhuru Park, then we wouldn't have even a park in itself. So fight for and advocate for cleanliness where you go, fight for the environment where you go. You see, another thing that we can do is educate people on the forest and land use, because most people do have land. it's quite fortunate that Africa was blessed with such good land, but people don't know how you can benefit yourself using that land. You see, how can we balance between meeting the human needs and environmental conservation with the particular land that you have? And lastly, we can also talk about awareness and community engagement. Create awareness, as Thomas was saying, and we all need to know how to create awareness based on particular things. Create an awareness on what is happening to the environment. Even the fact that you're telling us right now on this platform that it's the I don't know how to call it in the environment language, the 1.0 degrees Celsius, but we're headed in a place where global warming is becoming such a bad thing, and people don't know. You see, people don't know. So if you can create awareness on that and tell people, by this and this, we can do this and this. But now, there's global warming, we can do this and this. Let us continue having the conversation about the environment in its whole. And I think with that, maybe we could be able to curb the global warming, or maybe at least we'll be in a far better place than where we are at the moment. Yes.
All right. Again, what you echo there, it's individual efforts and keeping people accountable and people taking action. Justin, I don't know if you are there, but if you are, you can just unmute and dive right in. So I'm looking at policies, the structures, and I want to imagine, or sometimes we might be able to blame leaders and say things cannot be done on some stuff like that. And we the people don't want to take action. So Thomas, I'm coming to you. And this time, imagine you are the executive director for United Nations Environmental Program. If you were to come up with a policy that will ensure that we protect the environment and achieve the points or the targets under the climate change or life below water or life on land, what policy will you come up with? Just like I'm just curious, Thomas, what sample of policy will you come up with if you are the director of UNEP today?
Yeah, well, I think before I get into that question, I just want to do a bit of quick response. I think waste management is so critical within when we talk about climate action, right? A lot of times waste management is not a top priority, right? And sometimes really not a priority at all, but waste management is part of the public service, right? That are or should be provided. And especially I know in Kenya and in Nairobi especially, right? This is somewhere where I think a lot of improvements can be made, right? Both at the individual level, but also at the county level, at the governmental level, right? And the whole society level. So I think waste management is something that is oftentimes ignored, but should be included, right, in the climate conversation, and not just, right, life above land, right, life below water, conservation, forests, right, animals, right, or the green economy, blue economy, right? Waste management itself is something that should be, high up on the priority list, right? I know there are so many priorities. Every sector is a priority, but I think waste management, especially, right, in the conditions, right, that Kenya is in, definitely should be, a lot higher and be a lot more focused. But in terms of what you were asking me, if I were the UNEP, right, executive director, right, what would I think about? What would I do? But I think the first thing is we must recognize, right, the UNEP offices, it's actually in Nairobi, right? It's in Gigiri. So there is, right, I think, room, and there is opportunities, right, for people, right, in Kenya, right, the citizens, right, the civil society, to actually do this type of influencing, right? I normally am not, right, played the advocate role, but today actually I've been speaking a lot about civil society, right, about individual action, about advocacy, right? This is not what I do day to day, but actually I think it is quite a powerful tool, right, that complements, right, what the power structure might be, right? Whether it is the UNEP or whether it is, climate tech, right? Or whether it's innovation ecosystems, right? I think all of these players, right, are part of the conversation, right? And they can have a positive influence on one another. But I guess to answer your question a bit more directly, right? I think, understanding, right, the challenges, first of all, is really important. Unfortunately, we're facing a lot of challenges, right? Different sectors I mentioned, waste management was just mentioned, right? So I think first having a really strong diagnostic, of what are the critical challenges, and then finding critical innovative solutions, right? And I think investing, right, in innovation is actually quite important, right? A lot of the programs, right, that are being implemented by the international development community, now include the UNEP, right, the UN system as part of the international development community in this instance, right, are really large program focused, right, like multi-million, long-term programs, right? But I think innovating a bit, right, providing startup capital, providing de-risking, right? I think that's such an important word, right? De-risking the opportunity, right? De-risking the entire ecosystem, right? For folks, right, to enter is actually something, right, that organizations like the UN system can do, and to help improve the climate action, right? Not only in Kenya and Africa, but across the globe, right? Which is to de-risk and help create more friendly environments for entrepreneurship ecosystems to thrive.
All right. So I get a bit of finding out what the issues are, being innovative about the issues, or like just being innovative in terms of coming up with the solutions and doing all sorts of things. So again, good insights there, Thomas. Jambi, I see somebody giving you a shout out on social media saying Wakili Jambi. So Wakili, as Mwenda calls you, what are your policies if you are the UN UNEP executive director? What one or two policies will you come up with that will ensure that we hit all the targets under climate action, life on land, and life below water?
Whoever who's calling me Wakili, I believe I know the person, but my call of action would actually be more of what Thomas has said. It's a matter of, first of all, asking ourselves, where is the challenge? Where is the challenge in this climatic sector? Because we can't be able to come up with any policy or advocating for the climate if you don't know where the challenge is. And once we figured out where the challenge is, my first call of action would be collaboration. And what do I mean by collaboration? I'd take in hand the government, individuals, civil society, and any other particular player who's in this climatic sector to be able now to come up with these policies. And through collaboration, you get to know the challenges from the grassroots. From an individual basis, you'd know what a particular farmer needs. From the government basis, you'd know what the government needs. From the civil society, you'd actually know whatever the civil society needs in order for us to have this climatic danger that we are going through. Another thing will be advocating for joining the movement. I think there's a time whereby there was an African climatic summit whereby most people are usually not aware of these things. So if you can be able to join the movement such as this one, such as talking to the ordinary voices and talking to maybe organizations that are forward friendly in terms of climatic action, then I believe then we can be able to advocate for policies that are truly forward friendly. And lastly, what I can be able to do, or my call of action, would be educating ourselves. And I think from the beginning of the conversation, I've been very keen on telling people the power of education, the power of knowing what to do, the power of being informed about the climate sector, the power of being able to know what you can do, the power of being able to understand the intensity of the climate that we're facing right now. So that's what I base my policies on, and that would be my first call of action before getting on board any other ideas that may come up along the way. Yes.
All right. So I know, Jambi, you did jump on and answer the question that I was just heading on to there, but well done. So again, I know we are just running out of time, but we still got some number of minutes. Now, Jambi and Justin, Thomas, I know you are following all that is going on in Kenya and a lot of things that are going on in terms of the revolution, in terms of the change that we want. Again, it is the role of young people. And again, the young people cannot work alone to achieve the sustainable development goals or the targets for climate action. If you are today, go to a secondary school or a primary school or to a university to speak to young people on climate action, and you had 2 minutes just to speak to them, What will you tell them? And your 2 minutes starts now. Let me go with Thomas.
Sure. I was reflecting while the other panelists were speaking, why I was thinking so much to talk about, youth advocacy, right, training, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's maybe today we're at the platform, right, that you created, Peter Omondi, the Global Youth Forum. And I think that is the reason why, right, I have, such a, strong, admiration and such a strong, sentiment, right, of the role of all these sectors play within the climate action space, right? So I think that is truly important, right? I think that'll be point number one is all of the above, right? The advocacy, the engagement with civil society, right? And all of the above. I think point number two, right? If I would have 2 minutes, is it's what I mentioned also earlier, right? So maybe this is a good summary of what was shared, right, throughout the hour session, is thinking about this resilience, right? And thinking about this kind of like hustler mindsets, right? So I think these two qualities, right, or traits are so unique, right, to Kenya, but I think across the continent and across the world, right, especially for young people. So if the youth, right, can continue, right, to be resilient, right, and have this kind of like hustler mindset, right, to be able to pivot, right, really fast, right, fail fast, pivot fast, and then thing number 1 to 8 doesn't work, right, thing number 9 might finally work out, right? So I think that also speaks to what GYF is doing, right, with its different programs, from sports, right, to creating safe spaces, et cetera, right? So I think GYF is such a good example. And I think lastly, right, is what I just spoke just now in terms of the de-risking part, right? And I think this is speaking to more to people that are actually, are quote unquote, right, having a bit more control, right, of the society, right, having more control of the resources, right? So de-risking and providing, more safe spaces, right, strong innovation ecosystems for entrepreneurs, right, for advocates, et cetera, right, to make sure that they are failing less, right, and succeeding more is so important, right? And this can either be monetarily or actually also a lot of capacity building, right? Leads back to training, right? Lifting up the society as a whole. So I think the 3 points above, maybe a good 2-minute summary of some of the thoughts I've been sharing, right? So 1 is focused on the advocacy, right? The engagement. Number 2 is focused on kind of creating, right? This and leveraging this mindset of resilience and the hustler mindset. And lastly is de-risking and providing, robust, right, and innovation ecosystems for youth to thrive in the climate action space. So yeah, thank you for letting me, share some of my brief thoughts.
Okay. 2 minutes well spent, Thomas. Jambi, how will you spend your 2 minutes to just speak to that young person in either high school, a primary school, or a university on their role towards advocating for or championing climate action? 2 minutes starts now.
Okay. So I, as a youth, or I, as a Gen Z, as you people are calling us, the first thing I'd tell them is be your sister's keeper. Even when looking at the environment, be your sister's keeper or your brother's keeper. So what does that mean into actualization? Do not let anyone litter around you. Some things we take it for granted in such a funny way that for one person to litter, it doesn't mean that it's such a big thing. Yes, it is a big thing. So be your sister's keeper. Tell your friend not to litter. Be your sister's keeper. Tell a friend to plant a tree. Be your sister's keeper. Tell your friend to raise awareness. So in doing this from the grassroots, from down below, then we can be able to curb the major issue about whatever is happening with the climate. Because if you can't be able to tell the youth or even young people that littering will literally affect your life in a few years to come, or not planting a tree right now will affect your life in a few years to come, then they won't know the value of this climatic action that you're trying to bring forward. So be your sisters or your brother's keeper, create awareness, tell them how to create awareness, show them how to create an awareness when it comes to the environment, do more research, enhance your voice. When you're given a chance like this chance to talk about the environment, do it so loudly such that you make an impact. And also in channeling whatever Thomas has said, advocacy, and so much. So yeah, so be a sister's keeper even when you're looking about to curb this major issue that's affecting the climate, because at the end of the day, we all need to be able to know that our future generation has been catered for, and it starts with you. So it starts with you and being your sister's or your brother's keeper. That's what I can tell the youth or anyone of my age or even younger.
Oh, there we go. It's like be your brother and your sister's keeper. Meaning, for me, I would summarize that as just do the work and don't wait for someone to come and do it for you. So, Thomas, your 3 points were really well taken. Looking at advocacy, looking at resilience, creating safe spaces for entrepreneurs to de-risk, providing training, and then Jambi comes and tells us, look, we just got to do the work. We got to look after people around us and ensuring that everybody play their part. So as we almost come to the end of this talk, now I always end it with something, because we hear more people go on to these talks, they talk and they do a lot of things. As an individual, what do you commit to do, or what action are you going to take to ensure that your action contributes towards the realization of the targets for the SDG 13, 14, and 15? Your action, the one that you're just looking to take. Let me start with Jambi this time. So Jambi, next time we catch up, you are telling us, hey, Peter, I did this, and then Thomas tells us I did this. Justin also comes and tells us he did this. What will you do, Jambi?
Okay, to finalize or to come to the conclusion of this wonderful conversation, what I've been doing or what I can do is use my voice more. Not that I've not been using my voice, but I think from now on, now that we've had this conversation, it's prudent, even as a lawyer practicing here in Kenya, to use my voice at any moment that I get to advocate for the climate action, and to be able to amplify my voice even more, knowing that the state of the world is dependent on the climate. And that's what I intend to do. At the same time, I intend to participate in more conversations such as this one. And if any summit comes upon where I can be able to attend and even educate myself more on the impact of the environment, to ask young lawyers or even to ask young people in the society, then I'll take it and I'll grab it with both hands. So for me, it's more advocacy, more of joining places that are quad friendly when it comes to climate, and be on the lookout of how I can help in my community. Is it upon me to start an initiative whereby we're doing something that's pertaining climate? Is it upon me to write an article and ensure maybe a bill has been passed that is talking about this climatic action that we've been having a conversation about? So it's more of inputting whatever I've learned and combining it with the environmental sector such that we are able to curb this climatic action that we've been trying to talk about through the whole conversation. So yes, that's what I can do.
Oh, there we go, Jambi will use her voice to amplify climate action issues. Thomas, what will you do?
Yeah, I think for me, one thing I would hope to continue to do and support is to be continuing to follow, right, the climate innovation system, and to support, to champion, right, to advocate for the climate uh, ecosystem, right, in Kenya, whenever and however I can, right? And so I think that is something I've always committed to and will continue to commit. And I think it's so important, right, for there to be, folks from the outside, right, and doing, right, whatever they can to support all the great work, right, that people are doing, right, whether it is, the advocacy work, right, that you are doing, that GYF is doing, right, whether it is what the startups are doing, right, whether it's community engagement associations are doing, right. I think this whole array of climate youth ecosystems is so powerful, right, in Kenya. It's so vibrant, it's so diverse, it's so unique. And so, leveraging, whatever I can, right, whatever small contributions I can make, to support, right, to make connections, to share potential resources, right. It starts with, potential tag on LinkedIn, right, just to tag the individual, and then maybe they will apply, right, for the grant or the application, and then, who knows what will happen next, right. So just be able to share the resource, to follow what's going on, and to provide any support that I can, right? But making sure that is all led, right, by people like you and like your peers, because it is so valuable and so critical. And so just from the outside, or doing whatever we can to make a small impact.
All right, there we go, my friends. And I know Thomas, we go along back looking at the FTDF and what we done under Tech Change, and that's how we met. And Jambi, I know you know Val, who has been a lawyer, and you guys are doing a lot of things together. Justin, I know is coming from Global Youth Forum and is volunteering to do a number of things. As we come to the end, I know others might be looking at what's our call to action. I will just show this one. Will say, just say like very short time to show you what we guys can invite you to join in. So under Global Youth Forum, we host, I know Val touched on this when we were starting. So we host football tournaments, doing a number of things. And now we are partnering with the United Nations Football for the Goals Initiative to roll this tournament. So during this tournament, which we aim to bring 17 teams, each team representing a sustainable development goal, and we score goals. For every goal scored, we aim to plant a fruit tree. So this year, we hosted a tournament and we scored 53 goals. That then means we are aiming to plant 193 fruit trees. So we just launched a challenge which invites members across the globe to at least join the challenge and plant a fruit tree. So together we are inviting you, anyone watching this or anyone who might watch this later, as we conclude with our members' call to action, we invite everyone out there to join in we call it fruit trees for food, because our aim is to eradicate poverty. Imagine if we plant, say, 1,000 fruit trees across the globe. We can feed communities and we can eradicate poverty or hunger in a way or form. With that, on behalf of Val, based on the internet issues and stuff, I must say thank you for tuning in and thank you for coming to join us and to share your insights on June's topic. Until then, we look to see you and we look to engage with you going forward. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you.